Good morning, everybody. Are we ready to go with the meeting?
Yes, we're ready to go, Mr. Kehoe.
Perfect. Thank you, Linda. Okay, I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Joint Organizational Governance Committee and Board of Retirement and Board of Investments. Today is Wednesday, December 15th, and the time is 9:01 a.m. First item of business is the approval of the minutes of our November 4th, 2021.
Mr. Kehoe, I just have to read my little speech. Sorry.
Thank you. Yes, please do the official Zoom things.
All right. So thank you, Chair Kehoe. The meeting is being conducted as a virtual meeting, so I will do a roll call of the trustees to confirm attendance. Mr. Bernstein? Okay.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bernstein. Ms. Gray?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
A little
Mr.
under the weather.
Mr. Kelly?
Present.
Mr. Kehoe?
Present.
I'm sorry, I meant Mr. Knox.
I'm here too. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Robbins?
Present.
Mr. Santos?
Here.
Ms. Greenwood? Okay, I don't see Ms. Greenwood, and I already have Chair Kehoe. I will be calling on the Board of Retirement members. Mr. Moore? Mr. Harris? Mr. Pryor? Mr. Oakham?
Here.
Thank you. And Ms. Zapanta? Okay, now on to the Board of Investment members. Mr. Green? Mr. Jones?
Here.
Thank you. And Ms. Sanchez? She's not here. Okay, staff participating in the meeting include the following: Deputy CEO Luis Lugo, Chief Counsel Stephen Wright, AEOs JJ Popovich and Laura Guglielmo. We also have all the division managers and the budget team available on the call for any questions. Lastly, we have Samantha Grant and Tracy Gennady from Shepherd Mullen and Bob Klausner from Klausner, Kaufman, Jensen, and Levinson. Trustees, please use the Zoom chat option to be placed into queue. At this time, we ask all meeting participants to mute their mics until you're ready to speak. And now we may proceed with the agenda.
Thank you so much. Okay, we will go for the approval of the minutes of the JOG-C meeting for November 4th, 2021.
I'll move the minutes.
It's Keith, I'll second.
Okay,
Moved and seconded. Let's go on and please take a roll call.
okay. Mr. Bernstein?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Robbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Santos?
Aye.
Ms. Greenwood? I don't see her. And Chair Kehoe.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, that brings us to our public comment. I've received no requests from the public to speak. Anybody from staff?
We have not received any public comment requests.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is our consent item, which is the approval of the continuance of the online meetings. That's consent item A. Moved
Keith, I'll second.
and seconded. Let's go ahead and do a roll call for consent items.
Okay. Mr. Bernstein?
Aye.
Ms. Gray?
Excuse me. Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Robbins?
Aye.
Mr. Santos?
Yes.
Mr. Chair Kehoe?
Aye.
Okay, and Ms. Greenwood is still not in the meeting, so the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next item is our executive session. So we'll go ahead and put ourselves into executive session.
And Chair Kehoe, before we go into closed session, I'd like to state for the record that the executive session does relate to the employment claim of James Breck.
Thank you.
We may proceed.
Thank you. So we're now moving on to item 6 of our non-consent item A, which is a recommendation that the committee discuss whether it is necessary to amend the trustee travel policy on business class travel. We have a memo dated November 30th of 2021. This issue arose out of a trustee that was looking at traveling, and there was a 5 or 10 minute difference between the 5 hours. It was like a 4 hour and 50-minute flight on the return flight, and the flight to was over 5 hours. And the price differential between a business class ticket was actually less. And if they, the only option that staff had was to, because of the policies restrictions, were to bring it to the full board to discuss, and that would have been a month delay, and then we would have been in, the much higher cost bracket for the ticket. So the issue was discovered was there was very limited flexibility in either the chairs or the CEO's ability to make minor adjustments or improvements to the travel policy based upon the restrictions of the travel policy. So the discussion was the possibility of amending the travel policy to allow for like say 10% variance in the overall cost, or put an actual dollar figure, or just give authority to the chairs and conclude in agreement with the CEO of making minor adjustments to the policy. So this is agendized so that we could discuss it and provide direction to staff on how to proceed. I haven't written anything formally on it, but I will I'll ask if there's any thoughts or comments on it. My suggestion is that we allow either a $1,000 or $5,000 variance to the policy that would allow the CEO or chairs to make adjustments to the policy, as long as it doesn't fall outside of that that cost bracket. But in any case, I'll turn it over to any trustees, and I have Mr. Kelly with a comment.
Thank you. It would have been helpful to have some of those alternative suggestions in writing as revisions to the policy, because I didn't know that, and I wasn't aware of the specific circumstances of this exception. It does seem odd to me that a business class ticket is less than a coach ticket. But outside of those comments, I'm not supportive of the recommendation to revise the policy, because 5 hours is 5 hours, and if you have $1,000 leeway that we delegate to somebody, and it's $1,001, we're still going to end up in the same situation. Or 5,000 is 5,001. So we draw lines in the policy, and we draw those from the perspective of trying to meet the trustees' requirement to stay abreast of investment related topics and travel to these conferences, and our responsibility to manage the fiscal affairs of the agency. And I think the policy does a fine job at doing that. The other reason we were requiring these exceptions come before the full board was to increase transparency over travel expenses. And if we remove that process from the board, the transparency decreases in my mind. One thing the little cover memo didn't state as well was that the policy does allow a person who needs to travel coached to avail himself or herself of an extra fee or an extra charge related to extra leg room. A bunch of airlines do that now. So I'm not supportive of a revision to the policy. I think we'll end up right back where we were, which is there'll be some exceptions. People know to take the exceptions, other people won't. We'll end up with another press headline regarding our commitment to safeguard the financial assets of the agency. And we'll end up right back establishing some deadlines or some guidelines that are set in stone. So I didn't have enough information to make an informed decision. And if somebody wanted to put forth some actual revisions to the policy that we could review and the reasons for that, I'd be fine with that. But as it stands now, I'm not supporting any revision to the travel policy.
Thank you. I have Mr. Bernstein next.
Sure. So I was the one who triggered this. It's pretty simple. Because of trade winds, flights are longer when you're heading west than flying east. I went to Florida for a conference. It was 4 hours and 50 minutes to get there. It was about 6 hours to get back. Round trip tickets are less expensive than one-way tickets. And so buying a coach seat with legroom going there and then coming back in business actually was more expensive. And frankly, the policy does allow for common sense adjustments. The chairs are allowed to excuse absences for legitimate causes. It's a minor clarification. And frankly, you can take a red eye. You can extend your flight by having a leg linked on. It seemed to me, when I was asked if I was okay with this being brought forward, like a common sense clarification, not like a major scandal. And again, trade winds are what trade winds are. It is going to be longer to fly west than it is to fly east. And so, yeah.
This is Liz Greenwood. I'm sorry, I put me on the list to speak if you don't mind, because I can think of a different, maybe easier solution.
Okay, sounds good. You'll be next, Liz.
Okay, thanks.
I'm done.
Perfect. Thank you, Alan. I have Ms. Greenwood followed by Mr. Knox.
Okay. I don't see a problem with changing the time to 4 hours. If it from 5 hours. I mean, there's nothing magical about 5 hours or 4.5 hours, or something that would cover this so that we don't end up wasting time and money on, adding a layover to a flight, to a direct flight. That could also be a solution. That's all. I'm done.
Thank you. Mr. Knox.
Good morning. I understand the need for flexibility, and I had seen this request when it came up as chair of the BOI. I tend to think like Mr. Kelly does, just because of my day job. We get audited with some frequency, and frankly, the clearer the lines, the better for me. And I'm thinking back to the articles, and it painted a picture of us not having any parameters in place at all. And we spent a lot of time putting them in place. And now, and I'm not painting it this way or saying that's what Mr. Bernstein or anybody's doing, but if we start to erode those and start to say, well, we're going to now build in this wiggle room. Yeah, I think that's where I have an issue. I think similar to Ms. Greenwood, maybe instead of lowering the number to 4 hours, something simple might be just, a combined back and forth of over 10 hours. And that fixes what Mr. Bernstein just mentioned in terms of the trade wind. So if it's 450 and the other one is 6, you're well over 10 hours, which is double of a 5-hour flight. So that might be a way to get what you're trying to do without creating these vagaries in the policy. That was it.
Thank you. I have Mr. Santos.
Thank you. I generally do not have any objection with regards to providing some flexibility to the chair of the CEO. But I agree with Mr. Kelly that perhaps some language should have been put forward. Maybe that's on the staff. But I have a question, and perhaps this question goes to Mr. Rice. If we are going to make some changes in the policy today regarding this particular item, can we also make some or propose other changes at this meeting, Mr. Rice?
Well, this is agendized only for discussion of business class travel. However, if direction wants to be provided on other comments, I would envision that we would bring this back in any event. It does require both boards to approve it, but we could bring it back to this committee, a revised draft addressing any changes to the business travel provision, if that's the committee's desire, as well as anything else that comes up in the discussion. But this, as far as action is concerned, this is limited to business class travel per the agenda.
Great, thank you very much for that, if I may, Mr. Kehoe. So my suggestion would be to direct the staff to provide the language, providing the flexibility for the chair and the CEO on the travel, on the business class issue. And I will also would like to suggest that when we come back with the language, we take a look at the administrative expense. So right now, the policy calls for 10,000. In my view, I don't know how everybody else feels about it, it's not enough. We are halfway through the year, and many of us already getting relatively close to the 10,000. So anyway, that will be my suggestion is we come back, we look at the language, the proposed language for the business flexibility, and perhaps the discussion and opinion by the staff regarding increasing the administrative limitation from 10,000 to either 15 or 20,000. That's my view, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We also have a public comment from Mr. Robbins, just saying that he's in agreement with Alan.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, Mr. Bernstein, you'd like to make a motion.
I move that we recommend to both the Board of Investments and the Board of Retirement that they consider revising their travel and education plans to change the 5-hour one-way business class requirement to be a 10-hour round trip minimum. I also move that we authorize the CEO and the current chair to make selective revisions that are under $1,000 to individual travel plans, except for in the case when it's the travel of the board chair, in which case it would be the CEO and the board vice chair.
Can I ask for a friendly amendment that we asked for that language to be revised and then brought back to the JOGC for review? That way we can make sure that.
I'm absolutely fine with that. And I'm making that motion on behalf of both the BOI and the BOR, but somebody will need to second it if they want to.
I will second it with the amendment. And if we can also, in addition to that, following up on Mr. Santos's comments, direct staff to also bring in a revision to the California limitations, or that dollar value limitations.
And Mr.
I will second that.
I think I actually do. I think I made a mistake. I don't think we need a separate BOI and BOR because I think the JOGC is, so I'm actually just making it as a JOGC motion, if that's okay with you, Mr. Kehoe.
Perfect. So just to clarify for everybody, we have a motion on the table to direct staff to bring back to the JOGC a revision in the travel policy, revising the round trip travel to be 10 hours. In addition to that, allow for minor changes or approvals at $1,000 or less, including resulting in savings, to this committee to review. And in addition to that, although it's not in front of us for business, we are directing staff to also look at the maximum dollar amount included in that. So that's the motion.
May I clarify one thing, Chair Kehoe? For expensive revisions of over $1,000, they could still be allowed, but they would still continue to have to come to the full board for consideration.
So that language would not need to make changes. Okay, so before we, so we have a motion on the table, it's been moved and seconded. Before we proceed with the vote, we have some comments on it. I have Mr. Kelly followed by Mr. Knox.
Thank you. I believe the policy should be reviewed formally every 3 years. And I think it's been close to 2. So I just wonder if the motion could be more broad, that a trustee reviews the policy and has any other suggested changes could bring those forward as well. So that it just is an all-inclusive effort by everyone rather than just targeted to these specific items.
Point of clarification on that, Chair Kelly, if I might. The policy was adopted in December 2020, so we're a year in. The policy does provide for a 3-year review period or as needed.
I would suggest this could be an as-needed touch point if there are any other issues that any other trustees on the boards have that may not be considered here. We're not giving them an opportunity to tell us that. That's my only concern.
Okay, how about subsequent to the motion, depending on how it turns out, we direct staff to also reach out to the rest of the boards to provide any additional comments for consideration.
I'm fine with that.
Pretty good, okay. And I have Mr. Knox.
Yeah, just a question for the motion maker, Mr. Bernstein. The $1,000, I'm not saying that's an unreasonable amount, but I'm wondering if instead of directing staff, related to $1,000, add something like, or an amount based on, past experience type of thing. Just if they come back and say, well, actually, we've noticed it should probably be 1,500 or 500, we can have that discussion. I don't know if the 1,000 locks us into that exact number.
I would prefer to leave the motion the way that it is, and I'll explain why. I agree with Mr. Kelly that we need to be very concerned about public perception and media perception. I think what you're suggesting, although well-intended, is ambiguous. And if in the case of my specific thing, which I think we've talked about enough, it actually would have been a cost savings. It just was not permitted. I think when it's clarified as a small dollar amount or something that would save money, it's easy to let it go through, but I would prefer to have the specificity in place. And if in time we need to revise it, as Mr. Santos pointed out about the $10,000 cap, we'll revisit it. But that would be my preference for moving forward.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And another thing is that this will be brought back in draft form for the committee to review. So if we do look at it, or if staff does have any comments, staff could definitely feel free to provide those comments or alternative suggestions as they proceed. Okay, I see no additional requests for anyone to speak. So we have the motion in front of us. Let's go ahead and proceed with a vote.
Okay. Mr. Bernstein,
Aye.
Ms. Gray,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Ms. Greenwood,
Yes.
Chair Kehoe.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And if there's no objection, we will direct staff to also reach out to the full boards of both the BOR and BOI through the chairs to request for any additional comments or recommended revisions to the existing travel policy for consideration by JOGC. And hearing no objection, we will go ahead and proceed with item B. Item B is a recommendation that the Board of Retirement and Board of Investments utilize Prime Government Solutions for agenda management, live streaming, recordings, and online archives, and for the public interface solution, and provide guidance for the length of archiving the recordings on LACERA.com. We have a memo dated December 2nd, 2021. And who would like to run with this one from staff?
Good morning, Chair Kehoe. This is Louis. I'd like to just make a couple of comments, and good morning, committee members. Just some additional context and comments to emphasize some of the information from the memo dated December 2nd. The topic was first raised at a more narrow scope in 2020 as it relates to our live broadcasting and online archiving in response to the pandemic. As outlined in one of the attachments, there was a memo provided to the board, to JOGC, in October, looking at revising the live broadcasting or implementing a live broadcasting and online archiving policy. In 2021, it was going to be presented to JOGC, I think, in the April meeting. And Ms. Trustee Kelly did highlight some comments prior to that meeting that warranted us to pull the item from the meeting so we can further review really holistically our solutions, not only with live broadcasting and online archiving, but also agenda management and some of the other items highlighted within the memo. So through that process, the team went to an RFI and then looked at solutions that really looked at the complete process for our board meetings, agenda management, to name a few, for instance, agenda management, live streaming, recording, and online archiving. So what's presented to the board today is really the outcome of some of those engagements. As described in the memo, it was a detailed process. A lot of people were involved in terms of reviewing and analyzing some of the solutions that were out there. PrimeGov Solutions was by far the most comprehensive. It offered a lot of the aspects and within our board meeting processes. Some are to expand a little bit in terms of our current process today. We have 5 different systems that we use as part of our board preparation and board meetings. The current staff uses, specifically Bonnie, Linda, and Alex. And with those 5 systems, it's pretty cumbersome. So PrimeGov offers kind of a one-stop shop solution in terms of offering some efficiency in terms of our board engagements or board meeting engagements. We're looking for the board or for the JOGC to recommend and approve our ability to go to the BOR and the BOI to utilize PrimeGov Solutions, as well as some guidance as it relates to the archiving, the amount of the length of time that we would want to archive our meetings, as well as whether or not we want to use audio or video as a solution in terms of our archiving. So those are the 2 items that we wanted to call out. There is an option with PrimeGov to not use all 4 of their solutions that's outlined in the memo. So we do have some kind of an a la carte approach. So if we just want to use the live streaming and some of the recording, we don't have to go through their archiving solution. So we do have our team that was engaged in this process here for comments, and I stand for any questions from the board.
Thank you, Louis. Before I go to Mr. Robbins, followed by Mr. Kelly, I just have a brief question. Is this going to be a replacement for Board Vantage with the actual delivery of the material change as well?
Correct. It would be a replacement of Board Vantage if we look at that complete solution. So there's 4 different, PrimeGov offers 4 different solutions. So that would be one of those in terms of board materials and agenda management. Okay. And to highlight in the memo, and again, I know it's highlighted within our budget, but for instance, Board Vantage right now, we pay annually over $62,000 a year. This comprehensive solution is $40,000 a year, and it covers all aspects of our board meeting.
Okay, so I'll go to questions, but I would like to highly encourage some trustee involvement in that, since we're the end users of these material, and the system that we have right now seems to be pretty robust and very powerful. So I caution, if we're looking at making changes, that we want to make sure all the same benefits are there. And it doesn't sound like trustees were involved in that element of the discussion, but I'll go and turn it over. We have Mr. Robbins, followed by Mr. Kelly, followed by Mr. Bernstein, followed by Mr. Knox. So let's turn it over to Mr. Robbins.
Well, when I first looked at this, all I could really think of was we're hiring another consultant, another layer of bureaucracy, which is what I've seen for the last 45 years with the County of Los Angeles. They're probably the kings at bureaucracy and layers and layers and layers of garbage on top of garbage. So I guess my first question is there a reason why we can't do this internally with our staff? And there may be a good reason for that, I don't know. But it just seems to me that every time we go outside, our staff, I think in a certain respect, disrespects them. And we take them out of the game, so to speak. We're sending a message to them, in my opinion, that they aren't good enough to do this stuff. And I've been around the board for 24 years and been around the county over 40. So I've got some fairly good institutional memory and history regarding how all of this works. But Louis, there may be some really sound business reasons why this is the way to go. But once again, I have concerns about the message that we are sending to our own mid-level and upper-level management people, that they just aren't good enough to do this stuff. So that's my
Sure.
comment.
Can I ask for Ms. Delano to comment on the technology aspects?
Good morning, trustees. Yes, I'd be happy to comment. So the systems division was part of the selection process for this product. And while we do have custom applications that we have developed in-house and we maintain, it's a balance. You know, there are applications that have common requirements across many different organizations. And if you can purchase a product that suits your needs, there are definitely some advantages to that. Board agenda management is one of those areas where there are a lot of viable products on the market, and we did an analysis of all of them, and PrimeGov was clearly the leader. It does give us more than our current solution, BoardVantage. We're going to save money on it as well. It integrates nicely with a hybrid return to the board room, and we, you know, I'll speak for the systems division. We were part of the selection process and we don't feel slighted, but I do appreciate your comments, Trustee Robinson, because, you know, we are a valuable development group, and there are definitely applications that we do actively develop and maintain. But this is one that we're actually happy to purchase an existing product and also take advantage of a cloud solution. So the product is a hosted solution as well, which helps with our IT modernization.
Thank you. Mr. Robbins, did that answer your questions?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us now to Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. Louis, it would have been helpful to me, at least, if there had been a response to the comments in the spring memo, because it seems like, because some of those comments had to do with just direction forward, and I didn't get any response to that, to those comments, and then all of a sudden we're presented with an RFP that is really much, to procure services that are much broader than what were originally brought to us in April. In general, I'm supportive of the effort. In terms of your specifics, though, archiving, I was surprised you were asking us for a recommendation on archiving, because to me, it would seem pretty simple that the archiving, you would archive for as long as the agency's document retention policy says you should archive. If there's no line item for board meetings, then I would look for the staff to come and present the board with a recommendation to revise the document retention policy to include a line item for board meetings. I think the board meeting should absolutely be audio and video. And again, that goes back to my comment about no responses to the spring memo, because I think that would have been clear. The cost seemed really, really low to me. And a friend of mine works for the city of San Antonio, and they had procured this firm for their for the same reasons. And their cost was 1.8 million. So I would appreciate if we could just, and don't spend a lot of time on it, but just understand the differences between what San Antonio got for 1.8 million and what we're getting for 40,000. Also, the contract itself is subject to the laws of Utah, and that seemed odd to me because I didn't think we ever finalized contracts that were not subject to the laws of California and not the jurisdiction of the vendor state. And finally, PrimeGov was purchased a few months back by another firm called Rock Solid Technology, and I just would like some brief comments from the firm about how that merger is going and what the general intent is. Rock Solid is a bigger player in the same space, but still that wasn't mentioned in the materials. And my final question is, because of the expansion in scope, this now takes us to October, I think, somewhere around Halloween, to go live with these board meetings. Now I understand they're currently streamed, but they're not posted to the LACERA website. And my general understanding from the April memo is that staff could post at least the audio of current meetings on the LACERA website for members to listen to, or any other interested members of the public. Do we need to wait? Is this approach mutually exclusive, or can you begin to post meetings just as they are in audio form to the LACERA website, pending full implementation of this system in October?
Thank you, Trustee Kelly. And with respect to that last question, if I can have either Alex or someone from IT respond to whether or not we are able to post some of the audio now, if we have those capabilities, or if we can do that ahead of a full implementation.
Yes, we can find a solution to make that work.
Then I would recommend we not wait until October, but move forward as we can to post the at least the audio of the website. Those were my comments. Thank you very much. I appreciate staff's efforts. This was not an easy task when you evaluate all these products. So I do appreciate everyone's efforts in getting this to us.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Those were good comments, and I know that staff were taking notes on them because some of those need to be addressed as we proceed with this, which whatever direction we provide. Now this brings us to Mr. Bernstein.
Thank you, Chair Kehoe. I'm pleased with anything that increases our sunlight and transparency, and I think this is a good thing. My comment is related, and it is a concern. I've read through this. I don't know that I agree that the Board of Investments, although they may be interested in the archiving of their materials, has authority over it. This to me is not a JOG-C item. It's an OOC and BOR item exclusively. And on a purely practical level, if it's here at the JOG-C, it means it will go to both boards for approval, which means in theory, the BOI can stop the archiving, which I just, as much as the boards are interested in each other's business, I think this is purely a BOR matter. And I'm questioning why it's here before us. I see Mr. Pryor is here, who was involved in a committee that looked into this year. Mr. Santos is here. He was on that. Mr. Klossner, who's fiduciary oversight for that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think this really is a purely BOR item and not a BOI responsibility.
I'll ask Mr. Rice to comment, please.
This was put before the JOG-C because it's an issue of joint interest and potentially joint policy. So it comes under the joint policy and also the miscellaneous matters provision of the JOG-C charter. I think in terms of retention, that's a BOR matter. In terms of the overall issue of whether we're going to have a really significant change in how board meetings for both boards are presented to the public, it seemed reasonable for that to be a joint board decision so that all the trustees on both boards were comfortable with the way this is going to be presented to the public. I think the details of it are the approval of the contract once the concept is approved, the document retention schedule, certainly, as I said, and some of the other details are administrative matters for the Board of Retirement. But before we get there, we have this large change in direction that it seemed reasonable under the JOG-C charter to present to this group first.
Mr. Rice, can I ask if the Board of Retirement ultimately decided to live stream and record all meetings, both Board of Retirement and Board of Investments, and the Board of Investments said that they did not want their meetings live streamed, not that I think that they would they have any ability to actually make those changes, or would the Board of Retirement hold sole authority over that? Because I think that gets to the core of Mr. Bernstein's question.
Yes, so this gets back to the document retention schedule and the document retention of the records information management policies, which are administered by and acted on solely by the Board of Retirement. So I think this is what we're asking in terms of Board of Investments participation. It's really more conceptual in terms of the approach of going public with the video and so forth, which is a major change as opposed to the details of document retention, because every other document, including investment documents, are administered in terms of retention by the Board of Retirement.
But just to clarify my question, so if the Board of Retirement made the determination that all meetings at LACERA will be live streamed, and the Board of Investments was not consulted regarding that, would we still be able to live stream meetings from the Board of Investments, regardless of the opinion of the Board of Investments as a body?
My answer to that is that I believe that the the Board of Investments records are LACERA records and are under the control of the Board of Retirement as the body that has authority over document retention. We have made distinctions in certain policies. So for example, we have a procurement policy that's approved by the Board of Retirement that covers the entire organization except for investments. And that's subject to a separate Board of Investments procurement policy. So I suppose there could be an argument this is somewhat similar than that. But I think that what we're talking about here is retention of public information, and that's consistent with the general document retention schedule, which, as I say, already includes investment information.
Okay.
And has been handled by the Board of Retirement historically.
Got it. So I think a good way to, I don't disagree with Mr. Bernstein's comments. So I think maybe a good way we'll proceed with this discussion and meeting. And then my suggestion is that anything that we do, that we pass back to the Board of Retirement with essentially a carbon copy over to the Board of Investment so that they know what we're working on, but ultimately pass any recommendations back to the Board of Retirement, who can then ultimately make adjustments and adopt changes to the policy. I think that kind of clears up where we are today with this, so that we can still proceed with direction. We're here as a body. We've read the material. We've given direction. We kind of started it off, but ultimately we agree that the final authority comes to the Board of Retirement. So we will pass on the work to the Board of Retirement for consideration. So if there's no objection from the committee, that's how we'll go ahead and proceed. Mr. Bernstein,
just a comment.
One second, Mr. Pryor. I have Mr. Knox, but I wanted to ask Mr. Bernstein. I'll put you after Mr. Knox.
Okay.
Mr. Bernstein, did you have any follow-up on that?
Yeah, the bottom line is the JOGC is valuable for things it has to handle, but every time something comes here, it requires 3 meetings. And in my opinion, this only required 1 meeting or a committee meeting at the UC with a follow-up at the BOR. So in terms of efficiency and transparency, the Board of Retirement has great faith in the Board of Investments to handle $74.4 billion. I want to assume the Board of Investments has great trust in the Board of Retirement to handle purely administrative matters such as this.
Perfect. Thank you. And noted. Mr. Knox.
Thank you. Just a few different things. I'm generally supportive. I find Board Vantage to be fairly clunky. I agree with Chair Kehoe. I don't know if there was any outreach to trustees just on any concerns, pet peeves, wish list items we had in the new system. I think that would have been appropriate. To Mr. Kelly's point about record retention, it would be nice to see a recommendation from staff. And then also maybe what other systems do in terms of retention, just to either align with those or understand why we may want to be different. The last item I had is kind of a silly one. It's on page 33 of the 250-page PDF, where it has the time frame and it talks about June through August. Provide training to trustees interested in utilizing the application. And I'm guessing that means trustees that use it, that do not get the hard packet and want training. But the way it was phrased just made me think like some could still choose to use Board Vantage, or this wasn't going to be the application of choice. But yeah, I guess the way it was phrased struck me as odd.
Thank you.
That's it.
I have Mr. Pryor.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Bernstein. As you can imagine, I'm very much surprised that this was being handled as a JOGC item, but not so surprised. And I think he said most of what I would want to say, except I want to kind of express disappointment that the OOC was sort of cut out of this process. I mean, we at LACERA have a committee that is specifically designed and functions as those that can decide whether who's going to handle this contract, how it's selected, provide appropriate trustee input, into the contract selections, and we've sort of usurped the authority of the OOC to make proper, educated, and structured recommendations to the Board of Retirement, which is the route this should have taken. And in fact, that is the route it will take when it's passed to the Board of Retirement for appropriate review by the OOC, making a recommendation to the Board of Retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor. I have, let's see, I have Mr. Robbins stated, I agree. And then I have Mr. Kelly with a comment.
Yeah, just a final question for Mr. Rice. I'm fine with this going to OOC. I think it's an appropriate home. But Mr. Rice, for those Board of Investment trustees who are not on the Board of Retirement and not on the OOC, if we had particular interest in this item and wanted to share comments with the OOC when it comes up for agenda, my understanding is we have to pretend we're, well, we are just members of the public for that purpose, and we would have to submit any comments through public comment. Is that correct?
That's correct, either in writing or appear and speak for the 3 minutes
Okay.
orally.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'm sure we can also, as trustees, pass on information to staff if we wanted to relay thoughts or concerns as well. I don't think we're restricting Board of Investment trustee to 3-minute public comments. So
right.
They do have the ability to do that. Okay, I appreciate everyone's comments and discussions. I think that ultimately what this does is this gets us in the right place. I don't disagree with the comments that ultimately the authority lands at the Board of Retirement, but this is actually a good thing that was kicked off here. We've got comments and feedback from both sides of the table, and now it's up to the Board of Retirement to finish developing the policy. So I do not, I think that the best way to proceed with this is just simply to direct staff to take the comments that were made by the trustees into consideration as they revise the policy, and they present it to the Board of Retirement chair for consideration. And then that way the Board of Retirement chair can then consider how to best proceed if they want to move it to the OOC or whatnot. So if there's no objection from anybody on the committee, that's how I recommend that we proceed without a motion.
A point of clarification, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Santos.
So, so I understand correctly, at this point, we are not recommending to the Board of Retirement that we hire Prime Gov. Is that what we're doing? We're just gonna.
No.
So I'm clear. So I'm clear. So we're gonna. This is my understanding. So at this point, we're just sending it back to the staff with direction and to take the matter to the Board of Retirement. Did I understand that correctly, or?
Correct. So it's going without a recommendation from this committee. We are passing it back to staff to deliver to the Board of Retirement for consideration. So my assumption is that it would be pretty much as written, with some of the comments made today adopted or revised and changed in the final document that's presented to the Board of Retirement.
No objection.
Okay. I'm hearing no objection from the committee. So that will allow us to move on to a 10-minute break. So let's take a 10-minute break, and then we will come back with the last two remaining items. So if we can get started again at 10:16 a.m. 10:16. Linda or Bonnie, does it look like we have a quorum?
1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, we're good.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So this brings us to item C of our non-consent calendar, which is a recommendation regarding classification changes to the secretary positions to administrative assistant. I will go ahead and Dr. Natoya, are you available?
I am here, although my
Perfect.
camera won't start.
Perfect, thank you. I will, we've all have the material. We've all had the opportunity to read it. It's the memo dated December 1st, 2021. Rather than having a full-on staff presentation, I will simply turn it over to Dr. Natoya for any comments or additions that you want to make, and then we can open it for questions from committee members.
Well, good morning, trustees. I hope you are well and happy holidays. This item concludes or is one step in concluding the secretary classification and compensation changes. In 2018, we began the process of updating our classifications to make sure that the current classification descriptions as presented reflect the current assignments, programs, and responsibilities of the job. And that is a part of our larger plan to update our classifications over time. Our partners at CPS Consulting led the effort for us, and we have here presented for you, let's see, 5 classifications that have updates to their to the body of their duties, some of them title changes, in addition to some modest salary updates. If there are any questions, I am very happy to answer them.
Perfect. I have Mr. Kelly in the queue. Anybody else that's interested, please place yourself in the queue. Mr. Kelly, you're on mute.
Thank you. I did not see it noted in the memo, but I was interested in the cost of the consultant to conduct this review. You can provide that. And one of the secretarial positions had a responsibility listed that said something related to budgetary responsibility for a program. And I wondered why that was appropriate for that specific secretarial position. I think it was the executive secretary. It stood out to me as odd.
Well, I will have to get back to you about the cost of CPS Consulting.
That's
I
fine.
just happen to recall. And the duty statement. It is oftentimes secretaries do have responsibility for assisting their division managers with their budget and budget collection. So they very well may be responsible for maintaining the budget of a particular program within the division.
Well, could it say assisting? I mean, it reads as if the person has primary responsibility for the budget, and that just is what struck me as odd. And then one of the job descriptions states the position will provide support to a division or a major investment section. And that's suggested by just a plain reading that sections within the investment office are equivalent to a division. And organizationally, I just wanted to check in to see if that was true.
No, they do. One section in investments is not operationally equivalent to a division. However, each section does have their own secretary in their organizational structure. So it's more of a reflection of the org structure versus the equivalence of the organizations.
Okay, maybe you could just look at that wording because it suggests that organizationally they're the same size. And then my final question was, why, you know, I appreciate the route you went down, but another route you could have gone down was to just throw out these secretarial classifications and start from scratch and say, what kind of position do we need to provide support in 2021 versus, 1960? And I kind of got the feeling that some of that occurred, but not to the extent perhaps that could have been really beneficial. So can you comment on just a general approach and why you didn't kind of start from scratch? And I just say that because sometimes these, although the position descriptions are revised, and I think the firm made a reasonable effort in updating them, sometimes the language is still very much stuck in kind of, support and typing, and, there's still a requirement that the person has to type 40 words a minute, right? So we're still kind of stuck in and what we all think secretaries should do, rather than just kind of, a smart student worker from UCLA for 40 hours a week and what that person could accomplish for us. I mean, that kind of approach. So can you comment a little bit on just general approach, I guess, to the classification studies?
Right, so this classification study had the incumbent submit a position questionnaire in which they described the majority of their duties. So we started with them, their actual work performed and their duties. And then from that, and then we went from there. So there is still, so what we find is that there's no need to throw out the whole classification, whereas just update certain portions. So yes, typing is still pretty important. The ability to type accurately fairly quickly is still important for the job, along with assisting with what we would now call administrative duties, right? So there's still a need for photocopying, for filing, and for other types of assistance around the office. And so those duties continue to be needed by our divisions and our division heads, so they did remain.
Okay, well, filing is a good example. Filing something in a paper file, in a file cabinet, is very different than filing something electronically these days,
Yes.
right? And kind of the numbering system you would apply to it, where to put it, et cetera. So are you comfortable you're capturing the skill set today required for filing as opposed to the skill set from, 40 years ago required for filing?
So we did take a look at what is happening now, as opposed to a future vision of the position. So that is one of the reasons why it's a revision and not a new position, that there are duties currently being done. And we still do have quite a lot of paper files.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Any additional questions? Dr. Ntoye, any of the comments from Mr. Kelly that you're able to, that you have any concerns about, or are those things that you can include or adopt as revisions?
So I think I have a question about the language related to budget and to further clarify the primary responsibility for budget. I don't quite have wording for that right now that you could readily and quickly amend, adopt, and approve.
Okay, so I believe that this is going to go back to the Board of Retirement and Board of Investment. So you do have some opportunities to make some revisions. Is this something that you're going to need direction from the committee on, or is this something that staff can look, make any type of adjustments to the language and then bring that to the boards?
We definitely can.
Okay, perfect. So if I don't hear any objection from any members of the committee or any of the board members present, so we will go ahead and I will ask for a motion.
Move, this is Keith.
Second.
Moved and seconded with the comments by Mr. Kelly included. And let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Okay, Mr. Bernstein,
Aye.
Ms. Gray,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Ms. Greenwood.
Aye.
Thank you, and Chair Kehoe.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. So that brings us now to a report out. This is item 7, reports. Item A, for discussion purposes, the discussion about the reviewing our JOGC charter and based upon a referral from the Board of Retirement. I know, Mr. Pryor, are you still present?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, perfect. So what I'll do is I'll have Mr. Klausner do an initial introduction to this, and then Mr. Pryor, if you can make some comments, and then we can open it up for discussions from the committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Very briefly, you have a memorandum which is a product of the work of the ad hoc committee, originally as appointed and then later as a Brown Act committee, and then reported to the Board of Retirement, which then moved the item back here because it does affect the Board of Investment, as well as the Board of Retirement. Essentially, it streamlines the charter. It takes out, I'll just review what the changes are. And those begin on, those begin at the beginning of the memorandum, which is, I took out the phrase about joint management because the JOGC is a tool of the boards and not the other way around. So I thought that it was inappropriate or not accurate to say that the JOGC, supervises the boards. I did give a listing of the specific responsibilities of the Board of Retirement because what initially led to this concern was their belief that the JOGC mission that there had been mission drift and that things that were either the direct responsibility of the BOR or of the BOI were ending up here, despite legislative determination in Searle as to what the specific duties of each board are. At the bottom of page 4 of the December 6th memorandum, you'll see where I took out from section 3, combined oversight of the boards. The second was, acting as a liaison between the boards. The ad hoc committee felt that was cumbersome and that we were just layering on additional bureaucracy. And it was really best handled between the two chairs with the assistance of the CEO and anybody else appropriate in management. The third one was deleting the statement that the JOGC's purpose is to ensure each board is comfortable with the perspectives represented. I mean, you have your statutory responsibilities. So, whether one is comfortable with the other or not, again, seem to get into the area of mission drift. On the list of responsibilities that goes into section 4, I took out organizational philosophy, CEO search, legislation engagement and accuracy, and board disputes. And you've really changed the scope of your CEO search. And I've recommended, or the ad hoc committee's recommended, changing that scope to picking the consultant who's going to do it. Same thing, that was also expanded to include the chief legal officer, because these are the folks who are statutory officers who are assigned or engaged by both boards. Education and travel was combined with joint board policy development. I mean, you had an example of that today with the proposed change to your travel policy. It wouldn't be just travel or just education. I think to the extent there's a policy that touches on both boards, this is the right place to do that. Strategic planning and budgeting were separated also. Budgeting is a statutory responsibility. And strategic planning really isn't mentioned in the statute. That's for you all to decide. It would seem to me, or at least it seemed to the committee, the ad hoc committee, in its final report, that strategic planning is something that each board has its own vision, should have its own vision on. Classification and salaries is assigned to you by law, and as you know, of course, we're in the midst of litigating that question. A miscellaneous category was retained because anytime you make a list, later on you'll find out there's an exception to the list that you didn't contemplate. So in contemplation of that contemplation, we just left a miscellaneous responsibility, miscellaneous category. Last thing really was meeting frequency. I did review this with the JOGC chair in advance of today's meeting, who pointed out to me that it's really a good idea to have meetings scheduled with regard to upcoming budget issues. And I think that's a wise idea too. So that after meetings, I think in February and April, the chair indicated, then it would make sense to decide what a schedule would be afterwards, or leave the schedule on an ad hoc basis. So really, these are all, in my view, and I think the ad hoc committee's view, really, I'm sorry, was there a comment? Okay. Just to briefly, it's probably too late for a brief summary, but to close up, absent your questions, it's these are really, in my view, cosmetic changes designed just to sharpen the focus of the JOG-C and eliminate what has been, as the committee unanimously observed, style drift. So I will stop talking and answer any questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Perfect. And I'll give Mr. Pryor an opportunity. He was the chair of this ad hoc committee that turned into a full committee. And Mr. Pryor.
Sure, I will violate a personal rule, and that is I never follow Bob Klausner. That's never a good idea in any situation. But thank you, Mr. Klausner, and I think the committee's actions were very well represented by what he just said. We spent quite a bit of time talking about refining, not expanding, the current responsibilities of the JOGC and how those should be, how we can do that. And obviously the JOGC has some responsibilities that are, sorry, just a sec, call coming in. Those responsibilities are outlined in the charter, but we just want to make sure that the expanding circle of what those mean is refined a little bit and not expanded and expanded and expanded to the point where we may be cutting the Board of Retirement out of what is a very important and long-standing and we feel very successful decision-making process that is now being lifted up and removed and brought over to the JOG-C. And personally, I felt there was a pretty good example of that today. Other than that, I think there should be some attention paid next year to the schedule. A lot of deference will be given to the JOG-C chair and how the schedule is marched out through the year as far as JOG-C meetings, but having them regular and only, sort of providing this feeling that we have to provide items just to have a JOG-C meeting, I don't think is fair. I think we need to be a little more refined about how we will have those meetings and how frequently they're done. There was definitely quite a bit of formal and informal advice and input given to me regarding administrative time that's being spent on meetings that are duplicate meetings and having to follow the trails of questions from two sets of trustees and how that can be administratively very cumbersome. So I think we're on the right track here. I think this is a good cleanup motion and will be submitted to the Board of Retirement for final approval. So if there's any questions about the committee's work, I'd be happy to take the question. And I've never known Bob to be short of talking on the air. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And the recommendations did originally come to the Board of Retirement, and Board of Retirement, out of respect for the committee, provided this to us to be able to discuss our charter, and then ultimately we'll make a determination on how best to proceed. My thoughts on this, I think it was excellent work from everyone involved. I do agree that this committee is important in what it does, which is ultimately to reduce the need of having joint meetings and to allow both boards to come together on issues that involve both boards. And I think it's a constant struggle, not just for the JOG-C, but also for individual committees and stuff to determine what is appropriate to bring to committees, what committees they go to, and what boards they go to, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that this does a good job at fine tuning this and keeping the focus on the jog C and what's needed. Overall, I have no objections with any of the included revisions except for some recommended changes regarding the meeting frequency and the way that is worded. If you can just give me one moment here, sorry. The vacuum crew decided to come by. I think that the frequency comments are pretty vague where it's saying the committee shall meet as needed with the concurrence of the board chairs. My suggestion is that we state it as the committee shall meet in February to elect officers and conduct any required joint policy reviews, in April for budget reviews, and as needed based upon the request of the board chairs, JOG C chair, or the CEO. And the way that does it, make sure that we have a standard meeting at least in the beginning of the year, because we need to know who the chair is and vice chair for JOG C. And also we can schedule any joint policy reviews in that same meeting. So I know that is something staff's going to work on putting together, and we can have those pre-planned so we know what we need to sit down and look at. We can also discuss any direction on the committee for that year. And then also in April to assist staff with the budget review. And then finally, as needed, and the as needed allows ultimately 3 people or 4 individuals to put together the meeting, which would be either chairs requesting it, the JOG C chair, and or the CEO.
I think the only question I have about that, Sean, and thank you, because I do agree with those amendments. Is it proper to have the authority within the CEO to call a committee meeting? I'm afraid that's a little bit of a Robert's rules issue. I wouldn't mind saying the CEO with concurrence of either chair, but I'm not sure that the CEO should be basically the one calling the adjournment of a meeting.
Mr. Rice, can the CEO does the CEO have the authority to call a meeting of any of the board committees or the board meeting itself?
The body can delegate calendaring to the CEO. However, I think it's a good point that since the chairs, whether it's a committee chair or the board chairs, run the meeting or are running the boards or the committees, that if the CEO is going to take action, it certainly ought to at a minimum be in consultation. And that would bring it more into, normally the calendar is set by the body. There can be a delegation.
Perfect. So how about we just scratch the CEO element and then we just say at the request upon the board chairs and or JOG C chair. And then obviously that is inclusive of the CEO, that the CEO wants to call a meeting, they could speak with the
That's good here. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So that being said, those are my thoughts and comments. Before we proceed with any motions or anything, we'll open it up for discussion. And I have Mr. Kelly first with a comment.
Thank you. I would, as you were talking, Mr. Keogh, I think it would be appropriate to institutionalize an annual discussion of the agency's strategic planning process and efforts. And perhaps that could be a summertime meeting, I don't know, but I do think we don't have a strategic plan, we're developing one. Even when we had one, we didn't formalize touch points on it. And I do think an annual kind of presentation on the status of the strategic plan would be appropriate. And I think it would be appropriate to come to this committee meeting. I think I was a little bit confused about, and I think this is just the language, a little bit confused about, I get the process and I'm fine with the process and the cleanup, but some of the language I didn't really understand. I still think it's vague. So for example, there's no reference here to the chief investment officer and his recruitment, currently his recruitment or evaluation process. And I wondered why that was. For me, if we have a responsibility I thought the responsibility to hire the CEO was based in statute for both boards, but here we're removed, BOI's removed from that process other than to join in or or make a recommendation regarding a search firm. I don't know why we would even do that if we are not required, if we don't have any formal appointing authority. I mean, just to recommend a search firm is kind of silly to me in terms of all the other processes related to a recruitment. So that confused me in terms of the CEO, chief legal counsel, and CIO. All those positions have a reporting flow to the Board of Investments. But this policy is absent any reference to CIO. And then I was confused about references to CEO and chief counsel. So what is the BOI's role in terms of those three positions within the organization? Whoever can answer that.
Mr. Rice.
You're correct, Trustee Kelly, in that it's statutory that the hiring of the CEO is a joint responsibility of the board. That's also in the LACERA section of the county salary ordinance and personnel ordinance per LACERA's request. It's been more memorialized there as well, but it's in Searle. The original idea that the JOG-C would this goes back to the beginning, would assist in recommending a search firm just to be a place for that function to be initially vetted and then go to the boards for approval and then provide other assistance as needed. So it's recognized as a potential tool, but the responsibility for that hiring goes to the boards. As far as the chief legal counsel, there is the appointing authority for the chief legal counsel is the CEO, but the boards have adopted a policy regarding the evaluation of the chief legal officer, and also it gets into hiring and discipline, and it institutionalizes consultation with the boards so that the CEO has the benefit of that information while retaining the statutory authority, which comes from Searle, that he's the appointing authority. That's also recognized in the county personnel ordinance. As far as the CIO, the policy there, the Board of Retirement has no role, and I think that's why this committee has no role. There is a policy that recognizes the input of the Board of Investments in the hiring, compensation, discipline, et cetera, of the CIO, but no role. It's not a joint board. It's not recognized in any ordinance or law that this BOR has any responsibility there. So it's not a joint board responsibility that this board would probably want to get involved in. The CEO is the appointing authority under the personnel ordinances for the CIO. And so it's a similar process to what I described with the chief counsel.
I don't think it would be inappropriate to, just for information purposes, so the reader understands this, is to have some kind of footnote explaining why the CIO is not covered in the document. And then the document doesn't reflect, though, what you just stated regarding the CEO and chief counsel. And I think it should. And I don't know why, given what you just stated, the Board of Investments would stop its involvement in the CEO search just after we recommend a search firm. That means we have no role in the interview process. Is how I read this, and I don't know that aligns with statute. So I was confused there.
I have a different take on that. I believe that the JOG-C's role would be to recommend the search firm, but ultimately both chairs would develop an ad hoc committee as we've done before in the past. So the Board of Investments would be engaged in that. And I think the reason why staff didn't include that language is because it wouldn't really be the purview of the JOG-C. That would be the responsibility of both board chairs as far as the actual selection committee.
I see. Okay, that wasn't clear to me.
The idea, I'm sorry, Mr. Kelly.
No, we may want to think about something.
Was to just task the JOG-C with the administrative function of vetting a search firm, because some search firms are better at CEOs and some are better at CIOs, and so the idea was you take the input from membership on both boards about what you're looking for in a search firm. After that, the search firm would then performance work and then really deal with the boards. So
okay. maybe somehow, comma and add a little bit more so it's a little clearer for me. And then my other comment is the responsibilities are sometimes to me still a little unclear in terms of how they've been edited. So we say on page 142 of 250 that that LACERA in general has responsibility for other post-employment benefits program. And then we go on to say that the BOI, and then paragraph below that, the BOI invests and manages the OPEB trusts. Manages is a large word. And then we say, but the BOR is responsible for obtaining actuarial evaluations. The language is not consistent in terms of actual responsibility in my mind, and it kind of morphs from some sections to some sections. And I think we should be much clearer that as to what each individual board's role is in that process related to OPEB, because it wasn't consistent to me, and I think it should be. And one more comment. There was some mention somewhere of name change, and I don't know where that is. If you're looking for suggestions, I don't know why we can't call it an executive committee, because in my mind, that's what it is. It's an executive committee of both boards. I mean, it is an odd name, but I just throw that out there. If in fact we're looking for a new name, I think executive committee of both boards would be fine. But thank you to the group for their work. I don't disagree that it was warranted, and it's a good thing. I wasn't so clear in terms of the actual revisions to the wording, though, that it provided the kind of explicit direction that I thought might be prudent to think about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have Mr. Bernstein with a comment.
I just want to express my support for this. I really want to thank the ad hoc committee and then the committee that did this work. I think the JOGC serves a very valuable purpose in this peculiar bicameral structure that we have, but I think it should be limited. And I just, as we go forward and implement it, I just want to caution that maybe there's a better way to seek advice from one of the boards when it's affected by a decision but not impacted than to actually elevate them into the conversation. I have chaired corporate governance at the Board of Investments for 3 years, and candidly, it's a two-way street.
The gallon's frozen.
We have lost Mr. Bernstein.
I think he's frozen.
Yep.
I hate when that happens.
Yep. Well, I see no other comments or individuals in the queue. If Mr. Bernstein comes back, I'll allow him to finish with his comments. That being said, I would like to move the adoption of the committee charter to both boards for review, with the addition of the changes to item 10.1 to state that the committee shall meet in February to elect officers and conduct any required joint policy review in April for budget review, and as needed based upon the request of the board chairs and/or JOGC chair. I will need a second to that motion.
Ms. Greenwood
was Liz.
seconded, I think, Mr. Kehoe.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Greenwood. And so the motion has been moved and seconded. Let's go ahead and proceed with a vote.
Okay. Mr. Bernstein? Not here. Ms. Gray? Okay. Mr. Kelly?
I'm here, aye.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Grant. Mr. Kelly? Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Robbins? Mr. Robbins? Okay.
I believe he had to jump off.
Okay. Mr. Santos?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Greenwood?
Yes.
And Chair Kehoe?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for your assistance on these items. We have item B, which is information only regarding the final budget control report. Do we have any questions from any of the committee members? Seeing none, this brings us to items for staff review. I do believe that we had some direction.
Mr. Kehoe, since the items were part of the motions, they will be included in that.
Perfect. You don't want to recall them from memory?
Not today.
Just messing with you. Okay, perfect. So we will we'll proceed. There was clear direction during our discussions, and we know staff captured all of that. Okay, so that brings us now to the good of the order. I see Mr. Bernstein is back, so the motion was moved and adopted, but I will give you the last word on that item or any other comments.
I didn't think I was being that controversial, but I either got kicked out or the fates were conspiring. If it's not too late, I would register my vote in support of that. I was kicked out, and no, I just really I like the JOGC for dealing with what it has to deal with. I just think the challenge is to keep it limited and focused, and it sounds like there's been a general support and an excellent process. And again, I thank everyone for being a part of that process.
Perfect. Thank you. We will register your vote as an aye. And I will open it up to any general comments from good of the order rather than going around.
Kehoe, just a general comment from me. I appreciate the committee members' feedback and guidance on the agenda management, board agenda management process. And more importantly, Mr. Klausner and Trustee Pryor's work on the JOGC. I think for me, as a newbie, understanding kind of the where things get agendized and point of direction, I think is important. So I think for us as an executive team, making sure that we have a level of scrutiny on where we position things on the agenda is extremely helpful. So appreciate the feedback and guidance overall. Good meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. Any additional good of the order item? Going once, twice, 3 times. I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Good holiday, everyone.
You too.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Happy
Yes, same to all.
Yeah, bye.